Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss my attitude to the difference between Labour and the Conservatives, especially in terms of supporters, when it comes to losing elections, and why this may be part of why Labour lose a lot more often. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, this is the last video I'm recording. It may not be the last video that comes out over this Easter weekend, but I'm going away this weekend. In fact, at the time this comes out, I've gone away this weekend. Actually, by the time this goes out, I may be on my way back. I've got to sort out the schedule. I've never done so many videos in advance. If there's any breaking news over the weekend, yeah, I haven't done that because I'm not here. I'll get onto it tomorrow. But in the meantime, as you enjoy your hot cross buns, or whatever it is you eat in godless countries that don't have hot cross buns, I thought I'd explain a bit of my views on losing elections that have been built up over decades of observing British politics. So I've talked in the past about how ruthless the Tories are when it comes to elections. They really don't tolerate losing. When Labour last came to power, John Major was replaced by William Hague. Seemed a sensible enough choice. When Hague inevitably lost the next election, he stood down and he was replaced. There seemed to be no thought that the Conservatives would stick with Hague for another election. Well, he's a clever chap. You know, he's not eaten babies live on television or anything. Maybe we'll give him another go. You know, because I thought it a little odd at the time. Hague had made some missteps, you know, but he hadn't done really badly. You know, Labour had an organised operation going on, very slick. And they were delivering for the country in spades. No opposition leader was going to displace Labour at the next election. Everything was going marvellously. But the Tories never even considered, they didn't think to themselves, OK, he's failed, right, you know, we don't like failure. But actually, do we have anyone better? They didn't really think of that. You know, and you could say, well, his poll rating wasn't very good. Well, no, because people, it's like choosing between Hague and Blair, and Blair was knocking it out of the park. You know, he'd lost an election. And to highlight just how little time the Tories spent considering whether they should replace him or not, which is zero as far as I can tell, they replaced him with Ian Duncan Smith. That is an insult, isn't it? Can you imagine? Years later, I didn't really realise who Ian Duncan Smith was at the time. I was still quite young and not all that au fait with some of the individuals. But later on, you started to learn. I started to feel a bit of sympathy for William Hague. Being replaced by Ian Duncan Smith, that is an insult. That is a terrible insult. But I took it as a sign of just how intolerant the Tories were of losing. They just hate losing. We can see the same intolerance now. Over the past couple of years, the Conservatives have been passing some seriously draconian anti-freedom legislation. There will be plenty of Conservative MPs who know this is wrong. They don't like it. But they voted for it anyway. And you think, well, why? Because they hate losing more than they hate themselves. They didn't believe they could win the next election fairly. So they make various greater good arguments. They argue it's all for the greater good. Yeah, this is wrong. But it's for the greater good. It's how they sleep at night. And, you know, they'll do what's necessary to win. With the way things are going, the Conservatives are going to have sold what's left of their souls to win the next election, and they'll still lose. And after it, you know, in the years to come, I'll bet it'll be interesting. You'll see how many of these Tory MPs come out and say, when it's put to them, how wrong the various leaderships were to push some of these things. I'm not talking about the dehumanising of immigrants. They do that. They like that. But the restrictions on freedoms, that's not them. It's not all of them. And some of them will say this wasn't right. And they'll say that they shouldn't have done it as if it was someone else's fault. They'll still be detached from it. But it just speaks to how much they hate losing. There's nothing they won't do. And then you just take a step back and you think, so when the Conservatives lose an election, what do they actually lose, really, tangibly? When the Tories lose an election, what are they doing without? Well, millionaires have to pay a bit more in tax. That's it. If you think about all the other things the Conservatives like, they still get that with the Labour government. They like the economy. Labour do well with the economy. They do better, in fact. Businesses do really well. They did really well under the last Labour government. Policing gets good funding and support. All the Tories lose out on is tax breaks for the millionaires. That's the only thing that really changes. That they that it does change. And the wealthy people missing their lower taxes, see, even they don't lose because they're still wealthy. If they still get wealthier, in fact, they just have to pay a bit more tax. That's all they lose. And yet the Conservatives really hate losing elections. And yet all they lose is some tax breaks. But Labour only seem to hate losing now and then. We are currently in the phase of most Labour supporters, though by no means all, deciding that we've had enough. But a lot of the time, Labour seem to be taking losing in our stride. It's like, oh, that was bad luck. No, it wasn't. And you think, what do we lose? See, my attitude to supporting Labour is it's with the motivation of making people's lives better. Everyone's lives better. Not just those who are deemed to be worth it, the ones who already have it good. It's about removing social barriers. It's about letting people feel that they can find opportunities. And it doesn't matter what the colour of their skin is or what their accent's like or where they grew up, which part of town they grew up, which school they went to. It's about letting people feel that they're part of society. When the news say the economy's doing well, hasn't happened for a while, but when the news says the economy's doing well, we shouldn't have to point to numbers on a graph to explain it to people. They should go, yeah, I've been feeling things. I've been feeling it in my pocket. Things are better. When the country does well, people should do well. That is the essence of Labour. When Labour loses, hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes millions of people, who were doing all right before, will enter poverty. That's what we lose. Lives get worse. Some people will die before their time. We have lives cut short. Maybe because the social net fails. Maybe because cuts to healthcare means some don't get treatment in time. For some, it will be the poverty that damages their mental health very badly. For others, it might be the poorer diet, which may not cost them their life during that government, but it will shave years off their life in the long term. It might just be the government throwing a load of people infected with a deadly virus into care homes all over the country. Whatever it is, whenever Labour lose, I think to myself, there are now people who are going to become poor who didn't need to. And there are lives that are going to be lost unnecessarily. They're going to be cut short. That's what we lose. So why don't we hate losing as much as the Tories when we lose so much more? The Labour Party formed 123 years ago. Why have we only been in power for 33 of those 123 years? The Tories owning the media, that helps, of course it does. Big factor. But another big factor has to be that the Tories do not tolerate losing. But Labour do. And why don't Labour hate losing elections as much as the Tories when it costs us so much more? The answer to that is less clear-cut. Makes no sense to me. I was at the local Labour Party rally with Keir Starmer a few days ago. Came to my neck of the woods. And the people in that room were definitely sick of losing. And they were delighted that he'd led the party to what seemed impossible after the 2019 election. They don't really care who the leader is. They're not about, cult of personality. They just care that the leader has given them the chance to see a Labour government again, which he absolutely has. But there are others who aren't delighted at how Labour are doing. Still others who, even after seeing all the suffering inflicted by 13 years of Tory rule, they're just watching it, drinking it all in, being outraged at it, and they still think there are more important things than winning the election. That makes no sense to me. And I worry that the people in that room, they're sick of it now. They're delighted that we're now going to form a government. I just think to myself, we're going to win. And lives will improve. Things will get better. And then some people will get used to it and think to themselves, but it could be better still. And people will disagree then. People will say, well, we should be doing this more. Yes, what we're doing is better, but it's not good enough. And we'll split again and people will get complacent and people will start having internal battles, just like the Conservatives are now. Just like the Conservatives are now, having gotten complacent from being in power for so long. Labour will do the same again. And will suddenly prioritise things above winning the election. Will not hate losing enough. And then we'll lose. And the whole hideous cycle will begin again. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.